Everybody. Good morning and welcome to the Ventura Center for Spiritual Living. It's great to see you here today. Let's just be still and allow ourselves to be present with what is here in this sacred moment. We breathe. We relax. We let go. We sneeze. And we listen to the words of our sacred reading.
From The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. Life rarely unfolds exactly as we want it to. And if we stop to think about it, that makes perfect sense. The scope of life is universal. And the fact that we are not actually in control of life's events should be self-evident. The universe has been around for 13.8 billion years, and the processes that determine the flow of life around us did not begin when we were born, nor will they end when we die. What manifests in front of us at any given moment is actually something truly extraordinary. It is the end result of all the forces that have been interacting for billions of years. We are not responsible for even the tiniest fraction of what is manifesting around us. Nonetheless, we walk around constantly trying to control and determine what will happen in our lives. No wonder there's so much tension, anxiety, and fear. Each of us actually believes that things should be the way we want them instead of being the natural result of all the forces of creation.
And so let us unite with that force of creation that is the I Am presence. And we know that the name I Am is another way of saying spirit or God or higher power. And we know that that life, the I Am presence, lives and moves and has its perfect being through each of us, unfolding in perfection, not as the world would describe perfection, but in spiritual perfection. So let us connect with that now, as we know the I Am presence for ourselves, but also as we know it for those that we hold in our hearts, whether near or far, on this side of the veil or beyond. I am remembering who I am. Somebody's remembering. Let us breathe into that innocence and that joy and that sweetness. Breathe in deeply and then exhale as we gently open our eyes in love with what is as it is, and so it is.
Good morning, family. In this very room, there's quite enough love for one like me. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for one like me. There's quite enough power and quite enough hope to chase away any gloom. For For Spirit is in this very room, and quite enough power to chase away any gloom. For Spirit, for Spirit is in this very room, in this very room, in this very room.
Thank you. So good morning, everybody. It's great to see you. I thought I'd start this morning by speaking about hell. All right. I'm curious, I don't usually do congregational participation things, but would anybody be willing to call out what you learned about hell from perhaps other religions? Fire? Fire and brimstone? Eternal damnation? To be avoided? Okay. Okay. That one scared me. Okay. Well, I see there's some enthusiasm about the nature of hell, and we're going to change some of that right now. So I brought up hell because it has to do with what I'm speaking about today. I actually learned when I was a child, we used to gather around the dinner table for a family dinner every night, and my mother went through this phase where she wanted us to be great conversationalists. So she said, all of you girls, 4 girls, have to come to the table with an interesting fact to share with others. So before dinner, we'd be cramming, looking for an interesting fact. One of my sisters somehow came across this definition of hell, and she shared her interesting fact was, what is hell? And she said that hell was when you go to hell, when you're bad, you have this gigantic boulder and you have to push it up a hill. And then as soon as you get to the top of the hill, the boulder rolls down. And you have to do it again and again and again, over and over again. That was her interesting fact. Actually, she was borrowing from Greek mythology without knowing it. There's a story of Sisyphus who does that. But I'm bringing it up today, this idea of hell being pushing this against this relentless boulder and doing it over and over again for all eternity, because in this teaching, we teach that hell is not a destination. Hell is a state of mind that we can come into in this body, or we can come into the state of mind of heaven as well. But many of us spend time in hell by pushing against something relentless, and that something relentless is life. How many of you have ever struggled with life? How many of you have ever pushed against that boulder called life and pushed it up to the top and finally thought you were done pushing, and then it rolls back down and there's another boulder to push up to the top, right? So that's what we're talking about today in this talk about this. What's the name of the talk? I never remember. Live and let love. Yes. So there is an alternative to pushing that boulder up the hill. It is choosing to live and let love. Because as Hugh said in the reading, as Michael A. Singer said in his book, life is perfect. There is a perfection to life beyond our knowing, and life is love. Last week I paraphrased Meister Eckhart, who said, God became man so man could become God. And I paraphrased that in terms of saying, love became matter so matter could become love. And when we let go, when we live and let love, then our whole life becomes love. And that's what I want for you guys, because I love you. Seriously, I love you. Now, there's nothing wrong with a little wrestling from time to time. And if you enjoy the Wrestling Federation, whatever that show is, of course, that's totally real, right? They're not faking it at all. But there are times when we do struggle in life, and sometimes struggling can make us stronger, right? You know, you think of weight training, where you're lifting weights, and that resistance is making your muscles stronger. It's the resistance of the weight interacting with the power of the muscle to make the muscle stronger. Famous wrestling story in the Bible is when Jacob wrestled with the angel. Anybody know that story from your past? We don't talk about that a lot, but yes, Jacob wrestled with the angel, and he said that he would not stop wrestling or stop struggling until the angel gave him his blessing. And finally, the angel gave him the blessing, and he changed his name to Israel, which means one who wrestles, or one who struggles, or one who strives after God. And I think about what that blessing might have been, and in the context of this talk, what I think the blessing is that we get to realize that perhaps the only necessary form of struggle is the struggle that we encounter to let go of struggling. You got that? The only necessary form of struggle is the struggle that we encounter to let go of struggle, because it can be a struggle to let go of struggling when we're used to it, when it's a habit. Instead of struggling, we can engage in what the Gurdjieff people say, conscious labors and intentional sacrifice, which means letting go of the things like resentment, worry, fear, guilt, resentment. I said that one twice, maybe it's up for me. All of those things that stand in the way, that are forms of resistance that cause us to struggle in life, because it's not the circumstances in our life that cause us to struggle, is it? It's our relationship, our attitude, our participation with the things in life that cause us to struggle. So, again, a legitimate form of struggle is the willingness to struggle, to let go of struggling. Anybody on board with that? Good, because you're going to have to teach me, because I'm finding that I'm not an expert at letting go of struggle, if you can imagine that. Shocking as that may seem. One of the tools that we're using to assist us in letting go of struggle for this month and perhaps part of the next is this book that Hugh quoted from in the quote. The book is called The Surrender Experiment by Michael A. Singer. Now, I have to tell you that there is an ironic situation going on. Irony is afoot. Irony is not literally afoot. Irony is among us. Because I thought somebody was going to think irony was literally afoot, didn't I? Okay. Normally, at this point in the service, I would have a nice book on the podium, and I would lift it up and say, this is the book that we're featuring this month, but it's an invisible book this time. Because it was a struggle to get those books, and they have not arrived yet. And I have to say that Annette made lots of phone calls and emails to our distributor, which we have a wonderful relationship with Divorce Publishing Company, which is our distributor. She made lots of emails to try and get them here on time. I called them up, and I probably was not as nice as Annette. I was a bit persnickety perchance. And then when they weren't going to arrive, we tried ordering them from Amazon, and then Annette called around some of the bookstores and said, they've got 3 copies over at Barnes & Noble. I can go after work is over to pick them up. And with that email, I said, you know what? Maybe in our quest for the book called The Surrender Experiment, maybe, here's a thought, maybe we could just surrender and trust that the books will get here when they are supposed to get here, which right now looks like next week. But we're not really sure, are we? Because the universe is perfect. So let me tell you about this book that we don't have for you today. It's a book written by Michael A. Singer. And how many of you have read The Untethered Soul? It's a wonderful, wonderful book about the way our minds work. And Michael Singer started getting involved in this work when one day he was chatting with his brother-in-law, and he noticed, hey, there's a voice in my head. There's a voice in my head that's doing a running commentary on everything that's happening. And he started to observe that voice and form a relationship with it and understand what it was about. And as things evolved, he noticed that this voice had very strong preferences about the way reality should be. This voice was commenting on everything, saying how it should be. And perhaps, Michael Singer said, there is a greater reality beyond my opinions, beyond my preferences, and what would happen if I just surrendered to that? So he started by surrendering with something very small. He surrendered to the weather. Has anybody here ever complained about the weather? Right? I'm going to Arizona for 2 days next week. It's 110 on a good day. I'm already complaining about the weather in Arizona. And then it went on. He felt such a sense of relief from letting go, from moving past the idea of his preferences and moving into that place beyond his preferences where he just let life be life, where he let love be love, and he recognized that life was perfect. It moved into bigger things. It moved into his getting a PhD. He was an economics major, getting a PhD, and at one point, he wasn't going to take his test, but something happened, and he was signed up for all 3 portions of the test. He knew he was going to flunk the 3rd portion, and he said, I can't handle that, I don't want to fail. But then he said, oh, no, wait, this is an opportunity to look at my ego, to look at my relationship with failure. And so he did, and he walked through the fear, and he let go, and he moved to that space beyond preferences. He would prefer to pass, but he moved beyond that space. The day of the exam, he went and he sat under a tree with his economics book. He opened up in meditation. He opened up to 3 different pages. And when he took the exam, guess what 3 questions were on the test? A question from each of those 3 pages. In another scenario, somebody built a house on his land, and he wasn't planning on that. What did he do? He noticed that he was resisting this, and then he grabbed a hammer and he decided to help her. It's pretty extreme, right? The worst situation that happened to him was when he had, the whole book really is about how he surrenders and great things start to happen. And even bad things start to look like great things. You know, I read the reviews and they said something like, you know, it's a little redundant because he keeps saying, I surrendered, and then this great thing happened. And then I surrendered, and then this great thing happened. And I read it, and I got to tell you, I think I'm going to read it again because I need to hear that a lot. So back to what I was saying before, the idea, one of the worst things that happened to him that turned into a great thing was that he had formed this multi-million-dollar industry in software, in medical software. And at one point, one of his acquisitions, they had acquired a company, one of the people in his acquisitions was doing some tricky financial stuff, some illegal financial stuff. And so Michael Singer came to work one day, and the FBI was in his company, taking all of his emails over I don't know, 2 million emails, all of their files, everything. It was just a shell when the FBI was done. And so one of the points that I want to make today is that being in a state of surrender does not mean being passive. He hired a lawyer, and he did what he needed to do to protect himself. He knew he hadn't done anything wrong, but he still went through the actions to make sure that he was being protected. They ended up dismissing the case, but through the whole process, he was looking at this as an opportunity to work on himself, to look at how he wanted to attach to certain outcomes, to look at how he wanted to make people wrong, to look at how he wanted to fight with the U.S. court system, and he looked at all of it as an opportunity just to let go and to be in that spaciousness. He actually ended up writing The Untethered Soul during the period that this was going on, during the period between when the FBI came to his business and took over his business until the case was eventually dismissed. So I think the point is that there are many, many, many ways to surrender, and it's all going to be individual for us. We don't have to start at FBI-type scenarios. We can start where we are. We can start with the weather. We can start with something small. So, as a joy for all of us, I'm going to share with you some of the ways that I've observed that we can cultivate a greater aspect of surrender in our lives. Some of these may be familiar to you. Have you ever been desperate to know the answer to something? To a question or a life situation that doesn't seem to be resolving? Have you been desperate to see how that video turns out or how that movie turns out? You know, whenever we talk about a movie that we've seen and someone else hasn't seen, we always say, oh, don't spoil it, spoiler alert, don't spoil it, don't spoil it. But with our own lives, we want that spoiler. We want to know how it's going to turn out. We are desperate to know how it's going to turn out. And what if information comes to us on a need-to-know basis? What if we could relax into that knowing and trust and patience, trusting that the information will come to us as we need to know it? Probably about 15 years ago, I was out walking in my neighborhood where we used to live, and I had taken a different path than I normally do. I was avoiding some rednecks who used to make catcalls at me, so I went down this other path, and as I was walking, I looked on the ground and I saw there was a baby bird that had fallen out of its nest. And it was a very young baby bird. It was probably just 1 or 2 days old, and I knew that it probably couldn't survive. But of course I wanted to do something to help it because I love nature and I love animals and I love birds. So I stood there standing over the bird wondering what I should do. Should I pick it up? Should I bring it to the vet? Should I destroy it and put it out of its misery? What should I do? And I sat there very perplexed, wondering, wanting the answer right away. And so I stepped back for just a moment. I stepped under a tree and I put my hand on the tree to ground myself and I just said, Spirit, Spirit, just show me what to do. And when I said, Amen, I opened my eyes and a crow flew out of the sky, picked up the baby bird in its mouth and flew away. Now that was a very rapid response. I don't usually get such immediate responses from that question, but I think the point that I'm making with that is that the universe really is in charge, and the universe will give you what you need when you need it. Can we trust that? Can we move into that place of just knowing that? Can we know that all life is perfect in its own way? Again, not how we define perfect, but life is perfect in its own magnificent way. You know, you might say, well, that was perfect for you, and that was perfect for the crow, but what about the baby bird? Well, the baby bird was right where it needed to be, and it's part of the greater cycle of life as in terms of what happened. So life is perfect. Life gives us information as we need to know. And see if right now you can think of one area in your life where you are shaking the universe saying, tell me what I need to know. What do I need to know? I need to know it now. Desperate to know the outcome of something that's happening in your life. And can you just, let that go. Let that go. And be still and know that life is perfect. Let go of the need to know and instead move into the flow. Everybody there in the flow? Awesome. Okay. All right. Another way that we struggle against reality is sometimes in our relationships with other people. Sometimes we don't play nicely with others. One of my ministerial friends talks about how sometimes he wants to email me because he needs to prayerfully judge someone in his life. I'm right on board with that. Sometimes we struggle, we push that boulder up the hill when we are deciding how other people need to be in order for us to be okay. Has anybody here ever done that? Anybody? Please rise, again, as I always say. No. Please rise if you have not done it, so I can fall at your feet and worship you, because it's something that I think I do almost every single day. I decide how somebody else needs to be in order for me to be happy or content or peaceful, right? It's so embarrassing, right? It's just so beautifully humiliating to be human, all of these things that we do. So a couple of weeks ago, I was in an argument with somebody away from the church, as I often try and help people remember that I don't really talk about congregants up here, somebody away from the church, someone that I hadn't spoken to for probably about 5 years. And I did something that she didn't like. I actually did something that felt like I was acting out of integrity, but she did not like it, and she was really mad, and she sent me this scathing email about how angry she was with me and how hurt and how upset. And of course, me being me, I want to make it better, but at the same time, I want to make her wrong for being mad at me, right? Anybody? Yeah? Right? So there I am, I'm sitting in my little home office, I'm reading Meister Eckhart in one hand, and I've got the email with the unkind language over here, and I keep saying, no, I'm reading Meister Eckhart, reading about the purity of the soul, reading about how we can move beyond this place of judgment and preference and just moving into this soul spaciousness where we really meet God. And then I just get drawn back to this email like a magnet sucking me in. And I watched myself. This is the key to all of this stuff, is to watch what that little voice in your head is doing. Not just Michael Singer has a little voice in his head. Don't all of us have a little voice in our heads, right? So you watch and you see what that little voice is doing. And I saw what my voice was doing with such clarity. It was trying to make her wrong for being mad at me. It was trying to make her inferior to me for being mad at me because I'm so spiritual. And I had this whole list of reasons as to why I didn't really need to take her seriously. That she was an unrecovered addict, and that she was not as spiritually mature as me. And God, it's so embarrassing to admit this right here. And that she just was wrong, and I was right, and she was wrong to be mad at me. And then, maybe it was Meister Eckhart's fault. I don't know. But I'm reading Meister Eckhart over here, also very much aware of the Surrender Experiment book, and then just started saying, no, just let that go. Just let that go. See what else happens. See what else happens when you decide to let go of the struggle with this person that you are manufacturing in your head. And somehow, in the spaciousness of letting go, I found a great deal of compassion for her. I recognized that, believe it or not, she's a divine child of God too. You know, that thing we teach that everybody's a divine child of God except for that person that we're mad at? We don't teach that. We teach that everybody, even that person that we're angry at or that person that's hurting us, is a divine child of God. And I recognized that she had a right to her feelings, that she had been legitimately hurt by my action. Even though I hadn't done the wrong thing, she still had a right to feel what she felt. I still didn't know how to respond to her email, so I let it go and just decided to wait and see what happened. And then she called me at work and at home and really wanted to talk to me. So I called her, and I was in such a peaceful place from having done the work of letting go that it was a beautiful conversation, that I really, truly got a deeper understanding of why she was hurt, and also how I could have done things a little bit differently to save her some of that pain. And we really just had this lovely conversation where I really saw that the universe is much bigger than my petty annoyances with somebody else. And as we were closing down the conversation, I said to her, I just want to tell you, I really want to tell you that I understand why you reacted the way that you did, and I know, really, in the bottom of your heart, it's just coming from a place of pure love. And there was silence on the phone, and then she said, "What?" What are you talking about? I was just kind of like, never mind. We're good. I'll see you in 5 more years. I bring that up because it's not about changing the other person, is it? It isn't. It's not about making the other person as wise as we are. It's about allowing life to be life. And she was such a great teacher for me. She was life showing up in the form of this great teacher for me that taught me a lot about my own pettiness and insecurities and need to be right. And I was so grateful to have that stripped away for just a moment. I'm sure I'll pick it back up again. But each time it strips away, it gets harder and harder to pick it back up again because your conscience starts to kick in. And you start to understand that there is a much more graceful and loving and personally satisfying way to be in life. So there's that. There's trying to change other people. And then the third thing that I want to talk about, because I love 3, as you may have noticed. I love to talk about 3 things. The third thing is when we decide that life itself, the details of our life, are not showing up as they should be. And it may have to do with another person, it may have to do with circumstances, but there are times when we just want to shake life and say, life, cooperate, life, get it together. I need you to be this in order for me to be okay. Several years ago, probably 5 or 6 years ago, I was determined to have Wayne Dyer come and speak at this church and do an evening event. It would have been lovely. Honestly, I thought we needed the money. Because we were getting ready to paint, and I thought, well, we'll draw in a huge crowd for Wayne Dyer, and it'll be great. We'll fill the place. We'll take care of that painting once and for all. And so I really worked that program. I really was determined, and I had a contact who knew his personal assistant, and I got the phone number. And then because I was feeling so insecure and so manifesting to what I didn't want, I lost the phone number promptly, and I was too embarrassed to tell the person that I had lost Wayne Dyer's phone number. So finally I found it again right where I left it, and called up and did a great sales pitch, and they asked to see our material, and it sounded like he was considering it for a while, and then he said, "No, thank you." I had a few thoughts about that. Although I was gracious to his assistant and understood that why Wayne Dyer might not really want to come here and speak for a quarter of the fee that he usually gets. Right after she said no, I got an email from someone telling me about Nipun Mehta, person I had never heard of, person who is not famous. I always tease Nipun and say, we ought to say the secret according to Nipun Mehta. But I wrote to him and emailed him and asked him if he would like to come speak because I really loved what I read about him. And when I wrote to him, that very same day, the leader of our entire movement wrote to him about something else. And when he wrote back, he said, I don't know you, I don't know your church, but it seems like synchronicity that Dr. Kathy Hearn would write to me on the same day you did. So I think I'll come down and speak to Ventura. Let's see how it goes. And sure enough, he did. And it's been a relationship that has blessed my life and the life of our congregation so much. When I ran into, after Nipun came and spoke to us the first time, I ran into the board president at a party, at a Gourmets for God party, and she called me aside and she said, "Bonnie, aren't you glad Wayne Dyer said no?" And I am. I love Wayne Dyer, and I'm sure he would have done a fine job too, but I just know that Nipun was the right person for us and continues to be the right person for us. And it was such a heart-opening thing to know that we don't need to make this one tiny thing over here the answer to all of our problems, that we don't have to control the universe in order to get this one thing over here. Instead, we get to give up. We get to release the struggle and trust once again that life is doing exactly what life does, and life is perfect, and life knows what it's doing. That business about life being perfect. If you were here last week, I spoke a little bit about some of my challenges with this teaching, where we listen to the CD. I won't go over it all again, but I do have some challenges with this teaching. And for a while, another one of my challenges with this teaching was when people would show up and say, "Well, I'm going going down the 405, and I just know the traffic is going to be perfect," meaning that the traffic was going to part like the Red Sea, and you were going to go over the Sepulveda Pass with great ease. And that always used to bug me. I was like, well, you can't control the traffic. Maybe the traffic is supposed to be the way it is. Yes. We redefine perfect. If the traffic parts like the Red Sea, perfect. If the traffic is Carmageddon, perfect. Knowing that all those people in their individual lives, in their individual cars, are getting to exactly where they need to be in the right time. Just like all of the cells in our body do exactly what they need to do in their own power, in their own way, in the right time, orchestrated by something magnificent. Something magnificent that is beyond our brain because something is orchestrating our brain. That same power, that same presence is guiding this entire universe, and it is so much up to us just to decide that we will go with the flow, that we will participate, and that we will name everything that happens perfect, as hard as it is. I know that we've experienced some loss in this congregation, that there are people here that have been through just unspeakable things, and that it may be too soon to talk about this, but just perhaps that is part of the perfection too. Part of the perfection of bringing compassion to all of us, bringing compassion to the world, where there's nothing to say, where we can only sit with each other and listen to the sound of hearts breaking, where we can trust that there is a bigger picture, and that we can most certainly know that life is so perfect that it will not abandon us ever. That those loved ones that we have quote-unquote lost have been found. I once was lost, but now I'm found. And they are on the other side of the veil, just partying down, having a great time, doing what they love to do. I know that for our human companions. I know that for our animal companions. I know it for all life, because all life is perfect. I'm going to close with a quote from the book that we do not have for you today. This is from The Surrender Experiment. Great freedom comes from realizing that life knows what it's doing. Only direct experience can take you there. At some point, there's no more struggle. Just the peace that comes from surrendering to a perfection that is beyond your comprehension. Eventually, the mind stops resisting, and the heart loses the tendency to close. The joy, excitement, and freedom are simply too beautiful to give up. Once you are ready to let go, life becomes your friend, your teacher, your secret lover. When life's way becomes your way, all the noise stops, and there's great peace. Now, one of the things I've learned from Nipun, I mentioned this before, but I'm going to talk about it again just briefly before we pray, is that sometimes when we hear a message like this about surrender or anything, kindness, we think we have to do it all at once. What I'd like you to do now, as we go into prayer, is to think of just one small way that you can surrender. What is one small, authentic way that I can truly surrender? One thought I can give up. One resentment I can give up. One struggle I can give up. And start there and watch it grow. Let's do that now. Let us pray. So we turn within and let us just breathe for just a moment, just letting go of all the words. Because truly, the true message is not contained solely in words or music. It is most aptly contained in the heart, in that which is intangible, in that which is beyond our comprehension. But through our willingness to let go and to listen and to be here and to be still, to be present with what is, we slowly cultivate our capacity to be that essence that we long to see in the world, to be that power and that presence that is life. We are it already. It's just as we surrender, we align our comprehension and our awareness to remember that we are it. We are that, the life of God unfolding in all of its perfection. And so I am grateful for knowing this. And in the spirit of gratitude, I open my heart further with compassion to notice where in my life I might be holding on, where I might be engaged in unnecessary struggle. And just see, check and see once again, if there's an attitude, a thought, a resentment, a struggle, a piece of guilt that is clinging to you or you're clinging to it, a sense of punishment, any of those things or something else, worry. Just see if just for a moment you can just let it go. Just inhale deeply and then exhale and let it go. And for just a moment, feel the spaciousness of that. And know that a life is built, a life is sustained by millions upon millions of inhales and exhales. And every exhalation is literally a letting go. But now, because we know this, we can let go of that which no longer serves that greater, beautiful life of peace and joy that longs to express through us. Let us commit together to supporting this in ourselves and in other people. To be that place where it is safe to let go. To be that place where we move into surrender with ever greater ease, to discover the power and the brilliance and the glory of God, of spirit, of love in everything. Let us be that love that became matter so that matter could return to love. And let us understand that life has got us so clearly, so beautifully, so held in the heart of God in this wisdom and this love and this peace and this blessedness. I am so grateful for life, so grateful that life is life, and so grateful that life is sometimes challenging so that we get to work on ourselves, so that we get to engage in the joyous work of letting go. I'm so grateful So grateful to be here on this planet Earth, and so grateful for each of us that is here today. So grateful for the transformation that I know has taken place in every single person here and those that we hold in our hearts. I say a special word of blessing for those who are struggling or suffering, those that have passed away, and those that are coping with the loss. And I simply trust God's perfection in all of it, as I give thanks for it. I bless this spiritual teaching. I bless this center and everybody here. I bless all paths to God, churches, synagogues, temples, mosques, ashrams. I bless atheists and fundamentalists. I bless everyone and everything, because all is a blessing. With a heart so filled with blessedness, I say, thank you, Spirit, thank you, God. And I release these words into the mystical, and together we say, and so it is.
When I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mary comes to me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. And in my hour of darkness, she's standing right in front of me, speaking words of wisdom, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whispering words of wisdom, let it be. And when the broken-hearted people living in the world agree, there will be an answer, let it be. For though they may be parted, but still there's a chance they will see. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. There will be an answer, let it be. Let it be, let it be, let it be, let it be. Whispering words of wisdom, let it be.